Logan looked at Aaliyah, his expression softening. He didn't know if he completely trusted her, but he sensed a genuine desire for justice in her eyes. And he couldn't deny that he felt a growing sense of responsibility. He couldn't just stand by and let Omnicorp continue its reign of terror. "All right, Aaliyah," he said. "I'm in. I'll help you expose Omnicorp. But we do this my way. No more secrets, no more manipulation. We work together, as equals." Aaliyah nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Agreed, Logan. Together, we can bring them down." As they spoke, a sudden tremor shook the station, sending vibrations through the floor. The lights flickered and dimmed, and a loud alarm blared through the bar. "What was that?" Logan asked, his voice filled with alarm. "I don't know," Aaliyah replied, her eyes widening. "But I have a feeling things are about to get a lot worse." Suddenly, the disembodied voice filled the room, its tone now urgent and frantic. "Attention, all personnel. Security breach detected in Sector 7. All units report to their designated stations. This is not a drill." Aaliyah grabbed Logan's hand and pulled him to his feet. "Sector 7 is the research lab we saw through the ventilation shaft. They know we're here. Then we need to get out of here, now," Logan said. "Where do we go?" Aaliyah consulted the data chip, her eyes scanning the holographic map. "There's a maintenance tunnel on the other side of the bar. It leads to a restricted area known as the biocontainment zone. It's our best chance of evading them." "Biocontainment zone? What's that?" "I don't know," Aaliyah replied. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out." They made their way across the bar, dodging the frozen patrons and avoiding the patrolling security drones. As they reached the maintenance hatch, they heard the sound of approaching footsteps. "They're coming!" Aaliyah exclaimed. "Hurry!" Logan opened the hatch and pulled Aaliyah inside, slamming it shut behind them. They were once again plunged into the darkness of the maintenance tunnels, their pursuers hot on their trail. As they ran through the tunnels, their hearts pounding in their chests, Logan couldn't help but wonder what awaited them in the biocontainment zone. He had a feeling it was something far more dangerous and terrifying than anything they had encountered so far. But he also knew that it was their only hope of survival. And he wasn't about to give up, not now, not ever. He had made a promise to Aaliyah, and he intended to keep it. Together, they would expose Omnicorp's crimes and bring them to justice. Even if it meant risking their lives in the process. The darkness of the maintenance tunnels pressed in around Logan and Aaliyah as they moved deeper into the biocontainment zone. The air was heavy with a strange, almost organic odor, and the walls seemed to pulsate with a faint, rhythmic energy. It was a place that felt both alien and disturbingly alive. "What is this place?" Logan whispered, his voice barely audible above the hum of the station's machinery. "I don't know," Aaliyah replied, her eyes darting nervously around the tunnel. "But I don't like it. It feels wrong." As they rounded a corner, they came to a metal door, sealed with a complex locking mechanism. A small keypad was mounted next to the door, its surface glowing with a faint, green light. "This must be it," Logan said, examining the door. "The entrance to the biocontainment zone." He reached for the keypad, but Aaliyah stopped him. "Wait, Logan. This could be a trap. We don't have a choice, Aaliyah. We have to see what's on the other side of that door." With a sigh, Aaliyah stepped back, allowing Logan to proceed. He entered a series of codes on the keypad, his fingers moving with practiced ease. After a few moments, the lock clicked open, and the door slid open with a hiss. The room beyond was a stark contrast to the dark, cramped tunnels. It was brightly lit and spacious, filled with strange equipment and bizarre specimens. Glass tanks lined the walls, filled with swirling liquids and grotesque creatures. Scientists in white coats moved about the room, their faces obscured by masks and goggles. "What is this place?" Aaliyah whispered, her voice filled with horror. Looks like we found the biocontainment zone, Logan replied, his voice grim. And it looks like they're up to no good. They watched in silence for a few moments, observing the scientists and their strange experiments. Logan felt a growing sense of unease as he realized the true nature of the station. It wasn't just a bar, it was a prison, a laboratory, a place where sentient beings were subjected to unspeakable horrors. Suddenly, one of the scientists turned towards the door, his eyes locking onto Logan's. The scientist's eyes widened in alarm, and he pointed towards the door, shouting something to his colleagues. "We've been spotted!" Logan exclaimed, his heart pounding in his chest. "We need to get out of here." He grabbed Aaliyah's hand and pulled her into the room, his blaster drawn and ready. The scientists scattered, their faces filled with panic. "Hold it right there," a voice boomed from the other side of the room. Logan turned to see a tall, imposing figure striding towards them. The figure wore a white lab coat, but his face was not obscured by a mask or goggles. He had a stern, weathered face and piercing blue eyes that seemed to bore into Logan's soul. "Who are you?" Logan demanded, his blaster trained on the figure. "I am Dr. Eris Thorne," the figure replied, his voice cold and commanding. "And you are trespassing in a restricted area. I suggest you leave, immediately." "Not a chance," Logan said. "We know what's going on here. We know about the experiments, the prisoners, the genetic engineering." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "You know too much," he said. "I can't let you leave." He raised his hand, and several security drones emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on Logan and Aaliyah. "Looks like we're outgunned," Logan muttered. "Not necessarily," Aaliyah replied, her eyes glowing with an intense light. She raised her hand, and a wave of energy erupted from her palm, striking the drones with pinpoint accuracy. The drones sputtered and convulsed, their internal systems short-circuiting with a shower of sparks. They crashed to the floor with a metallic clang. Thorne stared at Aaliyah, his expression a mixture of surprise and awe. "What are you?" he asked. "That's none of your concern," Aaliyah replied. "Now, tell us what's going on here. What are you doing with these creatures?" Thorne hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Very well," he said. "I suppose you deserve to know the truth." He led Logan and Aaliyah to a secluded corner of the lab, away from the prying eyes of the other scientists. He gestured towards a large glass tank, filled with a swirling, green liquid. "This," he said, "is the culmination of years of research. It's a genetic soup, containing the DNA of hundreds of different species. We are using it to create a new form of life, a being that is stronger, more intelligent, and more resilient than anything that currently exists." "You're playing God," Logan said, his voice filled with disgust. "Perhaps," Thorne replied. "But someone has to do it. The galaxy is a dangerous place, filled with threats and challenges. We need to evolve, to adapt, to become something more than what we are." "And what about the sentient beings you're experimenting on?" Aaliyah asked. "What right do you have to subject them to this?" Thorne sighed. "It's a necessary evil. We can't make progress without sacrifice. These beings are contributing to the greater good." "That's a load of garbage," Logan said. "You're torturing innocent creatures for your own selfish purposes." Thorne's eyes flashed with anger. "You don't understand," he said. "I'm trying to save the galaxy, to create a better future for everyone. By destroying the present?" Aaliyah countered. Before Thorne could respond, a loud alarm blared through the lab. The lights flickered and dimmed, and the disembodied voice filled the room. "Security breach detected in biocontainment zone. All units report to their designated stations." "This is not a drill." "They know we're here," Logan said. "We need to get out of here, now." "It's too late," Thorne said. "They're already on their way." He reached into his lab coat and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and a force field shimmered into existence, sealing off the entrance to the lab. "What are you doing?" Logan demanded. "I'm buying you some time," Thorne replied. "I don't agree with your methods, but I can't let Omnicorp get their hands on you. You know too much." "What about you?" Aaliyah asked. "I'll be fine," Thorne said. "I know how to handle them. Just get out of here, find a way to expose their crimes, and save the galaxy." "But why are you helping us?" Logan asked. "You were about to have us killed." Thorne smiled sadly. "Because I realized something. I am not trying to save the galaxy. I am trying to save myself." As he spoke, the door to the lab burst open, and a squad of heavily armed security guards stormed into the room. "Get them," the squad leader shouted. Thorne turned to Logan and Aaliyah. "Go," he said. "Get out of here while you still can." Logan and Aaliyah didn't hesitate. They turned and ran, disappearing into the maze of corridors and chambers that made up the biocontainment zone. As they fled, they could hear the sounds of gunfire and explosions behind them. They knew that Dr. Thorne was sacrificing himself to give them a chance to escape. And they vowed to honor his sacrifice by exposing Omnicorp's crimes and bringing them to justice. As they ran, they saw a route open up with another vent. "Let's go now," Logan said. "Where are we going now?" Aaliyah asked. "We are going to save the galaxy," Logan replied as they crawled through the vent. Crawling through the cramped, dusty ventilation shafts felt like an eternity, but finally, Logan and Aaliyah reached another exit point. This time, instead of peering into a lab or control room, they found themselves behind a loose panel in what seemed to be a storage area. The room was dimly lit, filled with crates and containers of various sizes, their contents hidden from view. Logan cautiously removed the panel, and they slipped into the room. The air was thick with the smell of stale supplies and something faintly metallic. "Where do you think we are?" Aaliyah whispered, her voice barely audible. "No idea," Logan replied, his eyes scanning the room. "But it's definitely not on any of the station's official maps." As they moved deeper into the storage area, they began to hear voices. The voices were muffled and indistinct, but they seemed to be coming from the far end of the room. "Someone's here," Aaliyah said, her hand instinctively reaching for her energy weapon. "Let's be careful," Logan replied, drawing his blaster. "We don't know who we're dealing with." They crept towards the sound of the voices, moving silently behind the stacks of crates. As they rounded a corner, they saw a group of figures huddled together in a small alcove. The figures were a motley crew of different alien species, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. "Who are they?" Aaliyah whispered. "I don't know," Logan replied. "But they don't look like scientists or security guards." As they watched, one of the figures stepped forward. It was a tall, slender being with iridescent skin and large, luminous eyes. "We can't stay here," the being said, its voice filled with desperation. "They're going to find us. They're going to take us back." "Where else can we go?" another figure replied. "There's nowhere to hide on this station." "There has to be a way out," the first being insisted. "We have to find a way to escape." Logan and Aaliyah exchanged a glance. It was clear that these beings were prisoners, escaped test subjects from the biocontainment zone. "Maybe we can help them," Aaliyah said. "Maybe," Logan replied. "But we need to be careful. We don't know who we can trust." He stepped out from behind the crates, his blaster raised. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What's going on here?" The figures turned to face him, their eyes widening in surprise. "Who are you?" the tall, slender being asked, its voice trembling. "We're friends," Logan replied. "We're trying to get out of here too." "You're not with them?" another figure asked, its eyes filled with suspicion. "No," Logan replied. "We're not with Omnicorp. We're against them." The figures exchanged glances, their expressions slowly shifting from suspicion to hope. "What do you want?" the tall, slender being asked. "We want to help you escape," Logan replied. "We want to expose Omnicorp's crimes to the galaxy." The figures stared at him in disbelief. "You would do that?" the tall, slender being asked. "Yes," Logan replied. "We would." Aaliyah stepped forward, her eyes glowing with an intense light. "We know what Omnicorp is doing here. We know about the experiments, the prisoners, the genetic engineering. We want to stop them." The figures looked at Aaliyah, their faces filled with awe. "You're like us," one of them said. "You're different." "Yes," Aaliyah replied. "I am. And I'm not going to let Omnicorp get away with this." The figures exchanged glances, their faces filled with determination. "What do we do?" the tall, slender being asked. "We fight," Logan replied. "We fight for our freedom. We fight for our lives." "But how?" another figure asked. "We're just prisoners. We don't have any weapons. We don't have any training. We have each other," Aaliyah replied. "And we have something that Omnicorp doesn't, a reason to fight." She raised her hand, and a wave of energy erupted from her palm, striking a nearby crate with pinpoint accuracy. The crate exploded into splinters, revealing a cache of weapons and supplies. "Where did you get those?" Logan asked, his eyes widening in surprise. "I have my ways," Aaliyah replied with a smile. The figures stared at the weapons, their faces filled with excitement. "We can do this," the tall, slender being said. "We can fight back." "All right," Logan said. "Let's get organized. We need a plan." He gathered the figures together and began to outline his strategy. They would use their knowledge of the station to their advantage, moving through the hidden tunnels and passages, striking at Omnicorp's forces when they least expected it. "We need to disrupt their operations," Logan said. "We need to sabotage their equipment. We need to make them pay for what they've done." "And what about the other prisoners?" Aaliyah asked. "What about the beings who are still trapped in the biocontainment zone?" "We'll free them," Logan replied. "We'll free everyone. We'll tear this station apart and expose Omnicorp's crimes to the galaxy." The figures cheered, their voices filled with determination. They were no longer just prisoners. They were rebels, fighting for their freedom, fighting for their lives. As they prepared for their assault, Logan couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. But they had something that Omnicorp couldn't take away, their will to survive. "Let's do this," Logan said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's show them what happens when you mess with the wrong species." The rebels nodded, their faces grim. They were ready to fight. They were ready to die. They were ready to do whatever it took to bring Omnicorp down. As the group began planning, Aaliyah pulled Logan aside, her expression serious. "Logan, there's something I need to tell you," she said. "What is it?" Logan asked, his brow furrowing. Aaliyah hesitated, her eyes filled with conflict. "I wasn't always against Omnicorp," she confessed. "I used to be one of them." Logan stared at her in shock. "What?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "I was raised in a privileged society that was complicit in Omnicorp's activities," Aaliyah explained. "My family profited from their exploitation of other species. I didn't realize what was happening until it was too late." "So, you were a part of this?" Logan asked, his voice hardening. "No," Aaliyah replied. "I never participated in the experiments. I never harmed anyone. But I benefited from their crimes. And that makes me just as guilty." Logan stared at her, his mind racing. He didn't know what to say. He felt betrayed, deceived. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he asked. "I was afraid," Aaliyah replied. "I was afraid that you wouldn't trust me." I was afraid that you would hate me. Logan sighed. I don't hate you, Aaliyah. But I'm disappointed. I thought we were being honest with each other. I'm being honest now, Aaliyah said. I want to make amends for what I've done. I want to help these people. I want to bring Omnicorp down. Logan looked at her, his expression softening. He could see the sincerity in her eyes. He could see the remorse in her face. All right, he said. I believe you. But you need to prove it to me. You need to show me that you're truly on our side. I will, Aaliyah replied. I promise you, I will. She stepped forward and took Logan's hand, her eyes locking with his. Together, she said, we can make a difference. Together, we can bring Omnicorp down. Logan squeezed her hand, his heart filled with a mix of hope and determination. He still didn't fully trust Aaliyah, but he believed that she was sincere. And he knew that they needed her help if they were going to succeed. All right, he said. Let's do this. He turned back to the rebels, his voice filled with renewed determination. Let's show Omnicorp what happens when you underestimate the power of freedom, he said. Let's show them what happens when you mess with the wrong species. The rebels cheered, their voices filled with excitement. They were ready to fight. They were ready to die. They were ready to do whatever it took to bring Omnicorp down. The stage was set. They had the motivation, and now the means. All they needed was the opportunity. Aaliyah, since you know this place the best. Do you have any idea where we can hit them the hardest? Logan asked. Aaliyah smirked. The central control hub is our best bet. It's heavily guarded, but whoever controls the hub, controls the station. If we want to cripple this place, that's where we need to go. Aaliyah replied. Then the central control hub, it is. Logan replied. The kiss was a calculated risk, a gamble with the highest possible stakes. Logan knew it, Aaliyah knew it, and yet they both surrendered to the moment, the electric spark between them momentarily eclipsing the grim reality of their situation. But the moment couldn't last. The station rumbled again, a deeper, more violent tremor than before, and the alarm klaxons blared with renewed ferocity. Logan broke the kiss, gasping for air, his senses reeling. He pushed Aaliyah away gently, his eyes searching hers. That was intense, he said, his voice strained. But we don't have time for this. We need to focus. Aaliyah nodded, her expression serious. You're right, she said. The central control hub. That's our target. If we can disable the station's systems, we can free the prisoners and expose Omnicorp's crimes. Then let's move, Logan said, grabbing her hand. We have a rebellion to lead. They raced through the storage area, gathering the escaped test subjects and arming them with the weapons and supplies they had found. The rebels were a diverse group, each with their own unique abilities and skills. There was a hulking, armored being with incredible strength, a nimble, insectoid creature with razor-sharp claws, and a telepathic entity who could communicate with the others without speaking a word. Logan rallied them, his voice filled with determination. We're going to hit Omnicorp where it hurts, he said. We're going to take control of this station and show them what happens when you underestimate the power of freedom. The rebels cheered, their voices filled with defiance. They were ready to fight. They were ready to die. They were ready to do whatever it took to bring Omnicorp down. Aaliyah led the way, guiding them through the hidden tunnels and passages, avoiding the security patrols and surveillance cameras. They moved swiftly and silently, their movements coordinated and precise. As they approached the central control hub, they encountered heavy resistance. Security guards armed with energy weapons stood guard at every entrance, their faces grim and determined. We'll split into teams, Logan said. Aaliyah, you take the telepath and the insectoid creature and flank the main entrance. I'll take the armored being and the rest of the rebels and charge straight ahead. We'll create a diversion and draw their fire. Be careful, Logan, Aaliyah said, her eyes filled with concern. I always am, Logan replied with a wink. Now, let's go give Omnicorp a taste of their own medicine. The rebels charged into the control hub, their weapons blazing. The security guards opened fire, energy bolts streaking through the air. The armored being led the charge, its massive form absorbing the brunt of the attack. Logan and the other rebels followed close behind, firing their blasters and taking down the security guards one by one. Aaliyah and her team flanked the main entrance, using their unique abilities to their advantage. The telepath disrupted the security guards' communications, causing confusion and disarray. The insectoid creature darted through the shadows, slashing at the security guards with its razor-sharp claws. The battle raged on, the control hub filled with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and screams. The rebels fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their desire for freedom fueling their every move. As the battle reached its climax, Logan found himself face-to-face with the station's commander, a cold, ruthless woman with a cybernetic eye and a cruel smile. You can't win, the commander said, her voice filled with contempt. Omnicorp is too powerful. We will crush you like insects. Maybe, Logan replied, his blaster trained on her head. But we're going to make you bleed first. He pulled the trigger, and the commander fell to the ground, her cybernetic eye shattering into a million pieces. With the commander dead, the remaining security guards surrendered. The rebels had won. Logan surveyed the scene, his heart filled with a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. The control hub was in ruins, the floor littered with bodies and debris. But the rebels were alive, and they were free. We did it, Aaliyah said, her voice filled with awe. We actually did it. We're not done yet, Logan replied. We still need to disable the station's systems and expose Omnicorp's crimes to the galaxy. Aaliyah nodded. I know how to do it, she said. There's a terminal in the central control room that can override the station's security protocols and broadcast a message to the outside world. They raced to the central control room, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Aaliyah sat down at the terminal and began to type, her fingers flying across the keyboard. As she worked, Logan noticed something strange on the main view screen. The screen was displaying a holographic image of the station, but the image was distorted, as if something was interfering with the signal. What's going on? Logan asked. I don't know, Aaliyah replied, her brow furrowing. Something's blocking the signal. I can't get through. Suddenly, the view screen flickered and changed, displaying a live image of a group of figures standing in a darkened room. The figures were dressed in expensive suits, their faces hidden in shadow. Hello, rebels, one of the figures said, his voice smooth and menacing. We've been expecting you. Who are you? Logan demanded. We are the architects of your destiny, the figure replied. We are the ones who control Omnicorp. And we are not pleased with your little rebellion. You can't stop us, Aaliyah said. We're going to expose your crimes to the galaxy. The figure chuckled. You think you can hurt us? You're nothing but pawns in our game. We created this station. We created you. And we can destroy you just as easily. What do you want? Logan asked. We want you to surrender, the figure replied. We want you to hand over the station and go back to your cages. And if you do, we promise to make your deaths quick and painless. Logan laughed. Not a chance, he said. We're not afraid of you. We're going to fight you to the very end. The figure sighed. Very well, he said. If that's the way you want it, then so be it. But don't say we didn't warn you. The screen went blank, and the station began to shake violently. What's happening? Aaliyah asked, her voice filled with panic. They're activating the self-destruct sequence, Logan replied. We need to get out of here, now. They gathered the rebels and raced towards the escape pods, their hearts pounding with dread. The station was falling apart around them, the walls cracking and collapsing, the lights flickering and dying. As they reached the escape pods, they found that most of them were damaged or destroyed. Only one pod was still operational. "There's only room for a few of us," Logan said. "The rest of you will have to stay behind." "No," Aaliyah said. "We're not leaving anyone behind. We'll all fit in the pod. We have to." They crammed themselves into the escape pod, squeezing together as tightly as possible. Logan sealed the door and activated the launch sequence. The pod shot out of the station, hurtling through space towards the nearest planet. As they looked back, they saw the station explode in a blinding flash of light. They had escaped, but they had lost everything. The station was gone, the rebels were scattered, and Omnicorp was still out there, waiting to strike again. But they had also won a victory. They had exposed Omnicorp's crimes to the galaxy. They had inspired others to fight for their freedom. And they had proven that even the most powerful corporations could be brought down by the will of the people. As they drifted through space, Logan looked at Aaliyah, her face etched with sadness and determination. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We keep fighting," Logan replied. "We find the other rebels. We gather our allies. And we bring Omnicorp to justice." Aaliyah nodded, her eyes filled with renewed hope. "Together," she said, "we can change the galaxy." Logan smiled. "Together," he replied. "We can do anything." And so, Logan and Aaliyah set off on their new adventure, determined to bring down Omnicorp and create a better future for the galaxy. They knew that the road ahead would be long and dangerous, but they were not afraid. They had each other. And they had the will to fight. The galaxy would never be the same.